guys. There's that picture of me again. How are you? This is the damn adventures in live streaming. Thanks for showing up for another one of these things. Let me just pull the. That's right. Here I am, beard and all, here in the Wayne's World basement. What's up, you guys? How are you? Thanks for showing up again. We're doing another one of these things. Um, don't forget, if you like what we're doing here, like and subscribe to youtube.com/drive. Remember that. And and yeah, I mean, this is the adventures in live streaming. Oh, Ray Lee. So let's go right to the comments. So Ray, yes, I have updated my browser since yesterday, and in fact, I think I made it less easy to see what other junk I have on there. Anyway, this is all just me operating without a net, so that's all good stuff. Anyway, so we've been wanting to talk about the Japanese Japanese cars having their hot minute, like everything else is in the collector car market. But there have been a couple of sort of big sales lately, among the what we would call mass-produced cars, and I want to talk about that today with you guys and with our guest, who I am really excited to have on the show. Um, he is the proprietor of JapaneseNostalgicCar.com, a site that I started reading when it came out in 2006, and I was over at Jalopnik, and I used to link over to him a lot. And I had him on this show. As a matter of fact, in 2015, I am going to let's pull that up. Let's pull up Ben and Mike. Oh boy, remember these two guys? Yeah, Ben Hsu from Japanese Nostalgic Car, and oh, there he is. But that's him a bunch of years ago, and then there's me from a bunch of years ago. Anyway, without further ado, hey. It's Ben in the present day. How are you, dude?
Hey, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm particularly excited to talk. I'm always excited to talk about Japanese cars. And, last time we did this was 2015, which I can't believe was 6 years ago.
It feels like eons ago, doesn't it?
Yeah. It definitely feels like eons ago. A lot has happened since then. I just comb it all over on this one side. But yeah, I think when I didn't even have the longest hair with the last time we did this. But yeah, so this is an important show, I think, to do, is to talk about the Japanese car, sort of the not particularly surprisingly exploding Japanese car collector market. Of course, everybody loves to talk about the outliers, right? The really the ones that went for real big money. So of course we're going to talk about those, and we'll talk about some other stuff. But first, what have you been up to, sir? Let me while you do that, I'm going to pull up your site and we can look at it.
What have I been up to? I don't know, man. I'm just like basically beating myself up because I have been calling Japanese cars future collectibles since we started the site in 2006.
I know.
I was beating myself up for not hoarding everything because I could be totally rich right now if I followed my own advice.
Well, do you remember all the? Yeah, see, that was all the stuff. It was like I didn't have enough money to buy anything back then, but that was what we did on Afterdrive. It was like, yeah, man, you got to buy all the air cooled Porsches you can get your hands on. Find all of the Supras and all of the the AE86s that you could find, and just buy them all.
Yeah.
But like, of course, we didn't do them.
No, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, God, go back in time and kick ourselves in the ass.
Exactly. But but we can sit in front of cameras and yammer on about what's happening. So that's always fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we won't follow.
Yeah. but I guess we can start out with the car that everybody's been talking about. It's the Mark IV Gen 4 Super Turbo,
Yeah.
which has become the kind of it's sort of taken the place of where the NSX was in terms of being the car that everybody went, oh, how much is it now? But I think that the it's hard to find a $200,000 NSX, whereas it's really hard to find a $200,000 Supra. But we're going to talk about the one that did go for $200,000 pretty soon. But first, I want to show you guys something. It's a I want to show you. It's a clip, but I want to also ask a question, and that is who um, who did the voiceover in this Supra commercial from, not sure what year it is, maybe 96 or so. Um, let's see.
This is a line. To some, it is seen as a barrier. To others, it's a point where traditions of the past are abandoned in favor of visions of the future. Introducing the revolutionary new Toyota Supra. It's taken everything sports cars were before and crossed the line.
Yeah. Who do you think? Wait a minute. Let's see. Let me see if there are any guesses from the audience. Perhaps not. What do you have any?
Well, I would
Oh,
have guessed.
yeah.
Did
All
someone
right.
get it?
Yes, Ray Lee nailed it.
I would have
It's
guessed Michael Douglas if, yeah, I mean, but I know I'm wrong.
That's an excellent guess. It's Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen, the 43rd president of the United States. No, Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen did a bunch of Toyota commercials back then, and that was one of them. Anyway, so before we get into all right, here we go. I want to tell you a story of two Supras, a tale of two Supras, as it were. There's one that well, let me see. Let me pull it up. There's one that well, it's a JDM car. It's a Japanese domestic market car. Let's see. It's about 27 and a half thousand miles, so pretty low mileage. Right-hand drive, but it's an automatic. And let me see, where is it? Oh, here it is. How much do you think it went for on Doug DeMuro's Cars and Bids? How much do you think? Any
Are you
guesses?
asking me or are you asking the chat?
What would you say? Oh, I think I just gave it away, but if you didn't see it, how much do you think it would have gone for?
So, the auto really hinders this car, I think. Also the fact that it's been somewhat modified. Yeah, I mean, I would have probably guessed, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60, but
Yeah, I think I would too. Right? I don't know if I don't think it's a sport. Is it a sport roof? I can't tell. But either
I think
way,
the slip top is more desirable in many circles. So
yeah.
yeah,
So, but lightly modified.
yeah.
Well, of course, it's got the wing. And it is a turbo, and it has pretty low mileage. It went for 37 grand. Um, so this was one of the things I wanted to talk about. Was that? I mean, we'll get to the other Supra in a
Okay.
second, but like that seems real low to me.
That
Does that seem low to you?
Yeah, it does, considering that we've seen others sell for north of six figures. But I think this is like touching upon an interesting phenomenon, which is that, um, it used to be in the height of the tuner age in the 90s that having a right-hand drive car was the cool thing to do, right? Like you show up at your local illicit warehouse district drag race with a right-hand drive car, and it was like, oh my god, this guy's you know got to be the coolest guy, whatever.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I think it's the more. I mean, the collectors don't really care about that anymore. They seem to be prizing like the U.S. market cars that you know are obviously left-hand drive, but just like the cars that they're more familiar with. The Japanese Supra actually had, gentleman's agreement, 276 horsepower, whereas the U.S. one was rated at 320. So it's one
Right.
of those cases where we may have gotten the better spec, even though, you probably do some like light, you know, tuning and easily get it way past 276, but then it wouldn't be stock, right? So
Right.
yeah, like collectors really want something that's like just bone stock, and I think that's kind of what's driving the super prices up. You mentioned the NSX. I think the NSX, even though prices have gone up, is one of those cars that people did buy and preserve, right from the get go. So there are a lot of mint NSXs on these auction sites, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas mint Supras are a little bit harder to come by because people were like, oh, well, I'm just going to mod the hell out of it. And, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, it's true. I mean, that, first of all, like the late 90s was a long time ago, right? I mean, like there's been a long time. And then the other thing is like, once they started depreciating, I mean, everyone who could put 1,000 horsepower into the 2JZ like did it. I mean, that was the thing. It was sort of once the real outer limits of what that engine could do were started to become part of super street lore, right? I mean, like
yeah.
then all of a sudden
Yeah.
there they went,
It's kind of
and
interesting because the Supra never dropped below like a certain threshold, like maybe around $30,000 or so for like a decent example. Whereas
yeah,
cars like the 300ZX and the 3000 GT, like there are points where you could pick them up for like $1,500, right? I mean, the Supra
yeah.
never got to that level. Yeah,
Yeah, that's so true. Right, exactly. It never That's a good point because it is always it's supply and demand. The demand never went down, and I don't remember how many. Do you have any idea? I probably should have looked this up, but you know how many were made? It was in the low. I mean, it wasn't that many, right? It
I
was
don't know
low
off the top of my
tens
head,
of
but
thousands.
yeah, it's not that many. And you also remember there was like a emissions issue, right? So for a while in California, they were only selling the automatic, and then you could get the manual in other parts of the country, but not California for those few years. And then they
Right,
like, tweaked the emissions system or something and got the manual certified in California. But
right,
but yeah, I mean, all these like little things like kind of, held it back in the marketplace, and it and of course, like it was at a time when the exchange rate wasn't in Japan's favor, and by the from the time when it came out to the time it left the market, I mean the price like had gone up quite a bit. As with all those like '90s era Japanese flagship sports cars, and
yeah.
that wasn't doing them any favors in terms of like selling a lot.
That's true. Okay, so that's the first Supra of the two Supras, and then here's the second one is the one that I guess if you haven't seen, you already you probably if you've seen it, you know what it is. All right, let's again, forgive me, I am my own producer. Here you go. Do you remember this from a couple of days ago?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, $201,000, um, and not a slick top, right? But very, very low mileage, and a manual, and basically the spec that you want, other than I mean, other than the top, if you're really an enthusiast. But great condition and very low supply on these things. Like, where are you going to find? It's funny. Whenever you think that all of the really, really good ones are out of the woodwork, here comes another one,
right.
right? And then you're surprised, and you're like, where are all these cars with like no mileage on them. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, they've been hiding out for like 30 years, I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's an outlier. So maybe we don't sort of think of that one in terms of what the real values of these are. But like, I mean, six figures is where you are with a super
Yeah,
turbo, and
I
it's
mean,
kind of interesting.
yeah, so I think the first one to kind of break that six-figure mark was in January 2019.
Mhm.
And there was one, I can't remember the mileage on it, but it was pretty low, not 7,000 miles low, but pretty low. And it sold for 121, I want to say 121,000.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, like all these websites that were posting on it, like were saying, "Oh my God, the world's gone crazy. It's just a Toyota, blah blah blah." And then one of our writers, Patrick Strong, wrote an awesome tour de force piece about why it's not only worth 121,000, but is almost surely going to go up in value. And then, like a few months later, one sold for 173,000.
Right. That's right.
Um, but
He was right. I mean, listen, it's funny because, when we think about, we sort of sit on the sideline sometimes and look at the big numbers roll past and like, clutch our pearls and go, oh my God, I can't believe it. But like, there are very few really good, super turbos around. And, they have that mystique. So I mean, like, I think there are some things we should probably go through as like the things that drive big collect, the
sure.
mass produced collector car market. So it's not like, because you know it's nothing like the way that the short wheelbase Ferrari 250 GTO market goes, right? It's like these are all mass produced cars, so it's really about, you know among there aren't a lot of things to establish provenance. So, you know being low mileage, being an original car is the biggest one. So like you get these massive spreads between what like a 7,000 mile car goes for and a 50,000 mile car. But basically, right, same things as always. Demographics and nostalgia
Yeah.
always drive it, right? You
Yeah.
get that. Um, there's always some sort of pop cultural significance, right? Something bigger than the car world itself, that, bigger than what the kids on the car lounge would be arguing about, right?
Are you referencing the famous movie with Vin Diesel and
I mean, maybe, yeah, I would say. I mean, I think that's, and when it comes to the Super Turbo, people who know anyway. So I feel like that's just additive,
yeah.
right?
So a
Yeah,
couple of things about the Supra, right? I mean, Car and Driver tested one when it came out, and the 0 to 60 time something like 4.6 seconds, right? And that was phenomenal for that time, right?
yeah,
I mean, that was like supercar territory. So that was one of the things that gave it this mystique. I mean, it was like a supercar performance, but in a Toyota that I think was selling for like what, 45,000 or something, right?
yeah. I mean, I think this one went for 52, but it had like all the options.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
fully
uh,
loaded, might
Fully
be.
loaded, yeah, fully loaded
So
for 50 grand.
so that was like phenomenal, and then you know, I mean, he was even outgunning like NSXs, like but also like Ferraris, right? Like a
Yeah,
Ferrari 348. I mean, and so that was one thing. The movie thing definitely helped because that drew in a whole lot of people to the tuner scene, like the JDM scene that weren't in it before.
yeah,
And Patrick, in his article, which I encourage everyone to read, not just because we'll get clicks, but because it really is a tour de force article, argued that basically in the whole history of cinema, there's only been three cars in his argument that have like um, I guess, made enough of a cultural impact to affect the real world car prices. One was the DeLorean from Back to the Future, but we all know like it might look cool, but driving wise, it's kind of a heap, right?
right.
The second thing was the DB5 from Goldfinger,
Oh
and
yeah, yep,
yeah, and so that like kind of catapulted the Aston Martin DBs into the same you know, like kind of like same at the same to the same level as like, you know, Ferraris, you know, like you're talking about like these old, you know, short wheelbase like 250 GTOs, like those kind of things. Like, you know, Aston Martin is like uttered in the same breath as Ferrari now, but honestly, at the time, those cars were a little like slow and like, you know, kind of truckish, right? They're
Yeah.
not like super great performance cars, but the power of Hollywood catapulted those cars into like, you know, I mean, they're just like forever cemented in history as, you know,
Yeah.
enthusiast collector cars. And, you know, and then of course the Supra was the last one. And, you know, another, I'm going to steal Patrick's thoughts from the article, but, you know, it definitely what, you know, had that mystique of like, you know, this is something I built, you know, whereas like, you know, that famous scene where they pull up next to a Ferrari and they're like, you know, racing. The guy's like, oh, this Ferrari's more than you can afford, pal, or something like that, right? But, you know, whereas like the Supra was like home built. It was like built, not bought. And the Ferrari was, you know, any rich guy could just like walk into a dealership and buy it. So the Supra had that street cred as well. So
Right.
all those things combined, like, you know, is what I think is driving the price, driving this, you know, the basically frauding, you know, desirability of this car.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, the actual car that sold, that wasn't Fast and the Furious, the orange one, did you see this auction? It sold for like
Oh yeah.
550,000 recently.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. 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 I mean, that's
I saw this meme,
yeah.
right, that had the same, you know, thing where they pull up next to the Ferrari 355, and the you know, is Paul Walker saying more than you can afford, pal? You know, Ferrari driver.
It's so true. I mean, that is really that is a great summation of why that thing is where it is right now in the collector market. And then of course the scarcity of a clean,
Yes.
unmolested one is just, I mean, they're like, you know, the Brits would say they're, you know, like hen's teeth, right? But like it's they once in a while will show up, and of course they're going to go for big money. So let's answer a question real quick. So Ray Lee, weird question for Ben. What about JDM spec Euro cars? I'm looking at cars like JDM spec E34 M5 3.8 liter. The 3.8 never came to the US because of emissions. Are they different than cars from Europe? And just to sort
That's a
of,
good question, but
yeah, I mean, that's,
yeah, I
you know,
don't
it's
know the answer to that.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good question, and I think it's a whole show we can do, because I want to actually, I have right here. This is sort of randomly. So we've got this BMW 850i that we got, that was a Japan market car, but it's left-hand drive, because you know, at the time there were the Japanese market, they were buying, I think, basically Euro spec cars with one of these. And well, this is the relay, but this is the relay to the catalytic converter temperature sensor, which is a requirement for Japan. So, but it was prestigious to have a left-hand drive German car, so that's why you see a lot of
I
those.
mean, left-hand drive cars are actually fairly common in Japan. I mean, most toll plazas even have a booth that's for left-hand drive cars. And then there are some American car makers that sell in Japan officially, but they're sold right at the dealership with a left-hand drive, you know, steering wheel, so that, you know, for some reason it's like not illegal to do. Like, you know, in the US, like you can't go down to like a Toyota dealership and buy a right-hand drive car, right? Like, but you can do that in like a Chevy delership in Japan. You can just buy a left-hand drive car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another question for you guys. Um, would you buy, would you like do the thing where like you buy the automatic, maybe you get the right hand drive, maybe you get, you know, just because you want a Supra, or were you just going to move on? It doesn't have the spec that you want. It doesn't have a manual. It doesn't have a
Um,
slick top or whatever.
are you
And
asking me for buying advice? I mean, I would like, I'm a little bit of a stickler, so I tend to like hold out for the exact color, the exact, you know, spec and transmission, everything that I want. You know, I don't see a point in like, you know, just getting something that you're settling for, right?
Yeah.
But if you must have a Supra and you plan on modifying it anyway, like yeah, sure, I guess buy an automatic and swap in your own 6-speed, even though those are like really rare and expensive now too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just if you're going to modify it anyway, then sure, why not? There's no sense in like paying 200 grand for a pristine one to do that, right?
Right. Right.
But yeah, like I personally would just wait for the spec I want, and I'm not like super into like you know going fast, you know. So I would, yeah, I probably would just buy a Supra that's bone stock and stick with it and just enjoy the car for what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael Yee makes a good point. Body condition is greater than drivetrain. Automatics tend to be in better condition because they weren't beat on. That's a good observation. I mean, I think that it's not that you know driving an automatic is I mean, especially a Supra, it's still fast, it's still quick, and it's still fun, right? I mean, you're not going to it's not going to be as engaging, and of course, like you if you're going to spend the money, you kind of want a car that's engaging. I mean, that's the thing about a lot of the cars that are going up in value is they are the most analog, the most engaging cars, like the cars that are so different than the ones that you can get now. I mean, like look at we're going to look in a second at a Honda product, but like think about how much different a high revving Honda engine from like the 90s is from a modern engine. Like it's a completely different experience, whether
Yeah,
it's the Type R or an S2000. VTEC kicking in and all that stuff. It's like it's such a much more engaging experience than you get now with of course now, performance thresholds are higher, but that's one of the things that people are looking for. It's part of the nostalgia. So that's actually another element to this. So that's why you
Mhm.
see these massive gulfs between automatics and manuals too.
Yeah, I mean, Michael is right. I mean, like, once in a while here in LA, I will see like a mint condition like 240 SX on the road, right? I'm like, holy crap, like that, you never see those because all those cars are like drifted to death. And, if it's parked, I'll go up there and take a look. And sure enough, it's always an automatic. I mean, the manual ones are not going to survive. But, that's why that manual Supra sold for 200 grand.
Yeah, exactly. And then here's another one that we can uh one day I won't have to be my own producer on these, but for now. So here's a very important car that we should talk about. It's like again, it's sort of like clickbait. It's like we're always talking about the really crazy, outlandish numbers, but you can learn a lot by the cars that could just go absolutely batshit at the top of the range because it means that they really do mean something to people.
Yeah.
This Integra Type R, I mean, what did it have when it came out? Two, under 200 horsepower, right? But like the
Right.
pistons were going at like what 80 feet a second or something because
Yeah.
it was revving like mad. And then VTEC kicked in it, for 58, 7, 800, and it was a completely different experience. It was a very, very experiential car and so different than what you get now. So I get it, right? And then handling wise, very, very elemental and very analog feeling.
Yes. I mean,
Even
many say that this was the best handling front wheel drive car ever built.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, look, I would love to have one, and of course, like you go, 81 is ridiculous, but it's a really well preserved version of it,
Yeah.
and
Go ahead.
let's see, okay, is this of one owner? I don't remember if it's only 6,000 miles though. I would be actually concerned with some of these very, very low mileage cars because like where was it? Like how many things have been drying out? It's like um I don't know. I would be nervous. I think that I mean if you are going to be the guy that pulls your 6,000-mile car out of storage, I mean you're going to have to throw some money into it anyway.
Sure.
But
And you're not probably not going to track it or anything.
yeah, right.
Um,
But and then Slick Top 2JZ says raw is the word. It is a raw experience. And of course, that's what you want if you're going to be buying a collect, and not a collector car so much as an enthusiast car, because you're
Yeah.
not buying. I mean, maybe you're buying a $200,000 Celica, sorry, a $200,000 Supra not to drive it, but you're
No,
not
I
going to
don't think that
buy.
would be
The hell
much.
you're going to buy a Type R and not drive it? That would be insane.
Yeah, yeah. But
But
so the
yeah,
Type R is an interesting thing, that kind of proves our point from before, which is that, you know, the Type R's, I think, have a bit more of a craze amongst collectors. They're willing to shell out big bucks for them than NSXs, even though obviously the NSX is the, superior car in the Honda lineup, right? And I think that just goes back to the fact that, like, I mean, and obviously there are NSXs sold more than 80. I'm talking about like proportionally to what they were worth when new, and
yeah,
that goes back to the thing where, yeah, I mean, NSXs, I think a lot of people did just buy them and like stow them away in garages in the 90s when they were new, whereas Type R owners bought them, modified the shit out of them,
right.
went to fucking Battle the Imports and like drag race them, all the stupid stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that's why they're scarce, and that's why they're, really highly sought after now.
Yeah, and actually, it's a really good point about a 2020 Civic Type R would spank it in a million ways. And it's such a and really, of all the cars that came out lately that are sports cars, I mean, I think the Civic Type R is one of the best, or like
It's a phenomenal
absolutely one of the
car.
best. However, right? I mean, like it's a little bit of a different experience than getting a
Yeah.
naturally
I mean, this
aspirated.
Civic Type R is a Nurburgring lap record holder, right? I mean, that's just different. Like back in
Right.
the day, if you had an Integra, even like a GSR Integra or like a Civic Si, right? I mean, you could have just boatloads of fun all day without losing your license necessarily, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Honda did this press event a couple of years ago in LA where they brought out like a 1999 Civic Si, 99 or 2000 Prelude SH, and a bunch of their like cars from their museum, I guess. And like, these cars, like seriously, I mean, they had 200 miles on them, and they let us journalists like loose on Angeles Crest Highway driving these cars. And so back in the day, my girlfriend at the time had a '99 Civic Si, and so I, spent a lot of time with that car, but I just forgotten like how good it is. And when I was out in those mountain roads, like it was, I mean, you feel so connected to the road.
Yeah.
It's an experience that you can't even really replicate with the new Civic Type R, even though, like you said, the new Civic Type R will spank it.
Yeah.
And then I got to the Prelude SH, and it was like several orders of magnitude better. And I was blown away. I could not believe how good those cars drove. And I mean,
Yeah.
you could ring them out on those curvy roads all day and just, big ass grin ear to ear on your face.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about this is that like that was in terms of the trickle down effect from motorsport at Honda, it was happening. At Toyota, Toyota was doing like had a bunch of different sports cars. They were doing rally, with the I mean for a little bit, with the Celica GT4, but like there was a lot of motorsports trickle down, and especially at Honda. Honda had been bringing these like ridiculously high revving engines and putting double wishbones in cars like the Type R, and they really felt like something. It was really like a level up from where the '80s performance level had been. I mean, and so like we think about what tires can do now, what modern tires can unlock in the way that a modern car can handle so much more power and different kinds of suspensions, whether it be it, uh, active or whatever, all kinds of different technologies now. And so it's I mean, it's like the other thing with this. It's the nostalgia for that time when all of this stuff was happening.
Yeah.
People were reading Super Street and Sport Compact Car and arguing on the Car Lounge. it was just a fertile time for all this stuff to be happening.
Right. And there were so
Anyway,
many like tuner shops, in the US and in Japan that were making parts for these cars that, anyone in their garage could, you know, install and improve on. And I mean, yeah, it was a different time. Like the, and I feel like it is partially nostalgia, but like really these cars do have a more analog, more connected driving experience than modern cars, even though modern cars might be faster.
right, right. Actually, but so we're burning through this, but let me see what else we got here. There was other stuff I want. Oh yeah, well let's go through this real quick because I mean this is one where pop culture is involved, um, and the performance and especially tuning right for this. But let's just go because this is a car you know pretty well. Um, let me see. Yep. No, not this one. But anyway, well, this is a good accident because I wanted to throw this up there. These were the kinds of cars that were that you guys started covering in Japanese nostalgia car when I first was
Yeah.
reading, and I just didn't want to forget that I love me some Celica ST from the mid 70s.
Yeah, I mean, look at that thing. It's just beautiful, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's really like, you look at I don't know. I mean, this is the thing. It's like, this is where the demographics start coming in, but I love these things. I mean, it's absolutely a different, but to your point before, this is a very different experience than what would come later in the 90s, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is a very slow car, even by 90s standards. Um, and by today's standards, it's downright bicyclic. It's
Yeah, yeah,
bicycle.
absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so that's
You can't
let me
beat the
get
great looks.
yeah, exactly. All right, so let me find the one we were really going to talk about. Yep, there we go. So it's this
Mm.
old thing, right? Corolla
Oh,
GT-S.
it's just a Corolla. That's what
Yeah,
just a Corolla.
this is just a Corolla. This is an interesting one to discuss when it comes to sales because this was $40,000.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a great spec, obviously, had the limited slip. It had, uh, it was in great condition, but 112,000 miles, just really well preserved,
Yeah.
but not a 6,000 mile car, right? I don't know. What's your take on this one?
So this is interesting because a few years before, I think an even better example with like 80 something thousand miles sold for, I think it was like 24.
Hmm.
So, I mean, in a couple years later, this, I mean, decent, but, there's a little bit of, oxidization, I mean, it's not as mint as that other one was, it has more miles, now it sells for 40, right? So I mean, it just shows you what those and what the prices are doing. And plus, I think last week or so in the UK, a mint they called it the Corolla GT over there.
Mm.
One owner, little old lady owned example sold for the pound equivalent of $64,000. So I mean, yeah, the prices on these things are going up. And yes, there is like kind of a movie connection there with the initial D.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these cars were also drifted to death. I mean, the first one I bought, I think I paid like $900 for, back, in the early 2000s. And, I mean, it was bone stock, but it was with the one with the twin cam engine and everything. And yeah, I mean, it just, these prices are just unbelievable. But I
Yeah.
think those cars were also drifted to death.
Right.
I think
Well, it's
that's
true. I mean,
why.
that's one where like it's so hard to find one that hasn't been, modded, destroyed, just worn out. I mean, it was a mass produced, relatively, it wasn't an economy car, but it was economy plus. It was like
Yeah.
11 or 12 grand when a base Mazda 626 was like 8 or 9. I mean, it was just a little bit more than a standard, basically compact Japanese.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like a Toyota 86 would be today in the
Yeah.
marketplace. Yeah. Um,
Anyway, so that's one. I mean, but the interesting thing is that Initial D wasn't it wasn't like a mass what do you call it, a piece of mass pop culture, right? I mean, it was just
Right.
sort of a bit of an insider thing here. The thing that you talked about on the forum that you were part of, right? I mean, that was sort of maybe
Yeah.
you shared clips if you could on Real Media or whatever the whatever that we used to share clips on.
Yeah, but it did have a powerful effect on the people who are into Japanese cars, right? And then also there's like some auxiliary, anime fans that got sucked into it. But
Yeah,
yeah, like at the time, A86s were already kind of rare because when Initial D came out, I mean, it already been like 20 years since, or wait, I think maybe 15 years since the car was new. And that's when Initial D started like becoming really, getting some momentum in the US.
yeah,
And then to have a car that's already kind of dwindled and not, and it was never a car that people really preserved. um, and then to have that supply, that already diminished supply, culled even further by people who suddenly wanted to go drifting,
right, right.
that just decimated the supply.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the problem with building engines that can take a lot of power without, it's like, unfortunately, you built very robust engines, Toyota and Honda, and like, especially Toyota, because like, think of how much power you could add to some, sort of, I mean, 2JZ at least, right? I mean, that's just the top of the line one, but like, I mean, we're talking about, doubling, tripling your horsepower, and
Yeah.
then being able to mess around with it. I mean, it's not even, it's actually even, if you look at it, it's almost more, um, more exciting, I guess, even than the muscle car era, right? Because you could, you, I mean, I don't know, like I wasn't there for a lot of that, but
I
like,
can't really say. I mean, I mean, muscle car was probably pretty damn
yeah,
exciting.
I listen, sorry, I shouldn't. What am I?
But it is
I'm
like
just
the muscle
saying,
car era,
yeah,
for a new generation, which is why, it's like just like how in the early '90s, like the muscle car era or muscle car prices, I mean, we're shooting up,
yeah.
and I mean,
Right
what?
around the time you started Japanese Nostalgia Car, I think the Hemi Cuda convertible we were talking about yesterday went for like $1 million, and it was like, holy crap. But like,
Yeah,
there were only really like three ever made in that spec, right? So that was interesting though. And but what the question I had, and I don't know if I asked you this when you were on in 2015. What's the first $1 million Japanese car? Okay, that's not the Toyota 2000 GT, because that was the first $1 million Japanese
yeah,
concept.
and I'm guessing you're excluding like the Lexus LFA and all that stuff.
Well, yeah. Oh, actually, no. You know what? I shouldn't. But the LFA has any gone for 1 million yet? Because that's
There
about it.
was one recently that sold for some ridiculous price.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember what the number was, but yeah, there was one that, and it wasn't even that long ago. I mean, we're talking like maybe a year or two ago when there were still brand new ones, like, right? It's like sitting on dealer lots, and we were thinking, oh, $400,000. I mean, that seems like a steal now.
I know, it's crazy,
Yeah,
right? Because they were sitting on dealers' lots, and it was like, okay, well, if I had $385,000, I think I might pick one of these up, but like,
yeah,
I don't know. And then there was oh yeah, with the Savage Geese one, yeah, M Ice, that was the one that I think that was the one that sold for 800 or something like seven. So I can't remember, but yeah, I think that might have been the one that was really expensive. Um,
yeah.
so real quick, what's your take on the 300ZX? Well, yeah, let's go 300ZX.
I mean, that's a great, great car. So are you asking me like where I think prices are going?
Well, it's just like yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't sort of, if you have a take on prices, but it's just sort of like it's never been there. It's never kind of reached the same heights, and it
So
doesn't seem
the Z's are an interesting phenomenon. I'm actually wearing a Z shirt right now because we're about to launch, or we're about to see the new Z in a week or so, right?
Yeah.
But the Z's are an interesting phenomenon because there are still like a ton of old dudes, okay, who like fell in love with Japanese cars the minute the 240Z came out, and that have been collecting Z's ever since. So
Mm.
there are like quite a few mint condition 300ZXs out there, more so than the Supra. That's like one reason. I mean, they just sold more of them in general, okay, but also because there was that group of dedicated Nissan Z enthusiasts out there already. But then, okay, so there's not there's no dearth of them like there is with the Supra. And these guys, I'm talking about these older dudes, they would never modify them. They're just like buying purely for collecting. And but we still are seeing an increase in price. I mean, I like a low mileage twin turbo 300ZX. I mean, there was one sold not too long ago for like, I think it was like 40, 45. I mean, that was like the brand new price, right? So it's like at least recouped the depreciation. But yeah, like, but the issue with the 300ZXs is like, well, complex motor that's very difficult to work on if you don't know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's really no like elbow room at all in the engine bay of that car if you get the twin turbo version. But then there's also like things that kind of diluted the mystique of it. Like there was a 2+2,
Right.
So whereas the Supra was just had one body style, and he was either wing, no wing, turbo, or no turbo.
Wing, no wing, turbo, no turbo, sport top or slick top.
Yeah, basically those were the options.
So okay, real quick. I mean, so somebody asked a question about a Miata, and I'm like, what's the? I mean, the Miata has always been a kind of on two things, right? It's the car you buy and you kind of like bob and sway your way around the canyons, or it's it's an empty palette for you to paint a really cool track car on, I guess, right? Or it's the way that people cut their teeth on driving driving performance cars, whether it's on the track or on the street or anything. And so there's just have been a million of them made. So the supply is massive. They're robust enough that there are a lot of them on the market. And I don't know. I mean, do you see, what's your take on the Miata?
So I think that they will be collectible because like it's just going to take longer than other cars from that era, right? Because there were a lot more of them made. A lot of them actually surprisingly were kept in good condition. Because not everyone who bought a Miata was taking it to the track every weekend, right? Do you remember when it first came out? It was basically derided almost universally as a hairdresser's car.
I know it was.
I mean, it's bizarre now, right? I mean, that's like a different world now. Now everyone that has a Miata thinks they have like the best, purest, sports car ever made. But back then, like people, I mean, I don't know, people made fun of you for driving a Miata.
Yeah.
Now you just get respect. You're like,
I know. Now it's big. Yeah, big spec. No, you're right. By the way, I'm going to mention this right now. If my
mint ones,
they're going to go up in value. Yeah, especially like a really unmolested early one will go up in value. Absolutely.
Or you have a special
edition,
right?
Yeah,
they made like some special edition ones over the years.
Oh, that's true. Special edition ones too. I want to say this before my battery runs out and I have to switch it. I have an extra battery, but I know if this happens, you may be on your own for like a couple of minutes.
Okay.
But I want to mention that the Honda S2000. So if we're going above the year 2000 now, right?
Yeah.
S2000 is a car that a few years ago I said everybody should just go out and buy every one of them that they could find.
Mm-hmm.
They're going up in value. It's part of that whole sort of analog car experience of that motor. It's a special Honda engine from that era. It's very great. It's great to drive. The question is, what's your take on the value potential 5 years out for the S2000 Club Racer, which was the last one I ever drove?
Oh yeah.
I mean, the Club Racer was
going up.
So solid. This one went for, he's talking about Apollo Apollo Andretti said one went for 112K. That
Yeah.
is way more than I would have thought, but that sounds like an original low mileage car. But
Yes.
of all of them, that was my absolute favorite.
Yeah. So prices of the S2000, especially the CR, are already like shooting up. But I think, see, I used to really want an S2000, but as time goes on, I've kind of kind of like decided maybe I want a Miata instead. And I know that's like so cliche, but I used to think the S2000 was like the ultimate Japanese roadster. You got that like great displacement to power ratio and high revving engine. All the Honda traits, right? Plus, it had the link to the Honda S800. So that seemed like it was like right up my alley. But you know it's still fast. It's like really fast, right? So a Miata is a car that doesn't have you like clutching the steering wheel, and you don't have to be on edge to enjoy a Miata. You just enjoy it all around, and it's a great driving car all around. And so I'm thinking now, if I ever buy a Roadster, it'll probably be a Miata instead of an S2000. And
Well,
price notwithstanding, it doesn't. I mean, I'm not even talking about the price factor there.
yeah. Well, all right. I'm gonna throw one out there because three people, Cedric Parker, Ray Lee, and this guy, are big proponents of the MR2 Spider. The MR2 Spider, which was the problem that. All right, actually, we have one up here somewhere. Where did I? We have an MR2 Spider. I'm gonna pop this up here real quick. The MR2 Spider. Oops. Let me see here. Sorry. Again, eventually I will have my own producer. But I want to put this Spider up there because I loved mine and I had to get rid of it. I lost my garage for it, and I got a pretty good price for it. But I really would love to have another one. Spider, unlike the Miata, is very very short travel, very flat cornering. Um, but pretty comfortable. I remember getting out of a Lotus Elise and getting into this, and similar engines, right? The Elise engine was based on the GTS Celica GTS version, which this one has the 1ZZ, which is not as powerful. So not a powerful car, but super light. Um, Great steering, although it has early EPS, but it's sort of half EPS, and it's a fantastic car to drive. Very different experience than the Miata, but not as robust an aftermarket scene. So very tough to mod these things. I mean, the people who do, and they know how to do it, and they get it done. But like, um, I loved mine, and I loved mine bone stock at about 7 to 8 tenths, and just fantastic. Now, the downside, not a particularly special engine, right? That's the problem, right? So when you buy a Honda, you buy an S2000, even I guess a Miata even, but like the engine just feels like it came out of something kind of you know kind of pedestrian. So that's the only thing. That's the only drawback. Could have
Yeah,
used the GTS
but
version.
I mean, a lot of these cars that are going up in value don't have particularly special engines, right?
Yeah, true.
So it is more of like the analog driving experience, the nostalgia factor, and I think some of these cars like the MR2 Spider are kind of sleepers. You can still get them at a pretty reasonable price if you don't want to pay like the ridiculous auction prices for like an S2000 or even like some Miatas. It's a great alternative. The another car that's like you alluded to is the Celica GT-S, the last generation Celica. That GT-S, I mean, had a fantastic high revving engine. I mean, it's almost like an Integra GSR,
Yeah.
but it's a Toyota, and it's a little bit underrated, I think, and
Yeah.
really affordable. If you want Integra driving experience, but don't want to shell out big bucks and have to worry about it getting stolen every 5 minutes, then
It's true. Well, that's true. That was the
it's
oh,
great.
I think I'm going down. I got a battery warning.
Okay.
But if that happens, what I was going to say is, like, we used to say about Integras in general was that, like, you don't own an Integra, you're just holding on to it for the person who's going to steal it from you.
Right.
Um, but, like, yeah, the GTS motor, the 2ZZ, is a fantastic engine, and I just don't understand what the reasoning was behind them not putting it in the MR2 Spider. I've heard different things about production numbers and this and that's, and I don't know why they did, because the MR2 Spider would have been really, really good then.
Yeah.
I think maybe they were concerned about people spinning them on the highway, but it had an open diff, right? It wasn't like, no, they didn't even do limited slip. I think they were maybe really concerned about the mid-engine, quirks of driving a mid-engine car for the average person.
Yeah, that probably is the biggest reason. I mean, Toyota is very conservative when it comes to like liability issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, this is like, I'm just watching my battery. It's orange and it has the line through it.
Okay.
So I know some bad things are going to happen pretty soon.
Well, I can't see the chat, so any questions will just be completely invisible to me.
Well,
Yeah.
let's see what we could do.
If you want to just like, tell me to riff on something,
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, what about the Lexus IS300 Altezza? What is it? How do you pronounce that?
Altezza. I mean, I say Altezza, but yeah.
I've been saying Altezza, but I get teased because I say Altezza. But like, well, yeah. What's your take on that? I'm going to change the battery. You riff on that, and I'll be back in a second.
I think the Altezza or IS300 is probably the last really great Toyota. It came in a manual. The handling was comparable to a BMW 3 Series at the time, and it's got 2JZ naturally aspirated. So it has all the potential of a really great tuner car. I would say that the IS300 Sport Cross is probably even more likely to be a collectible just because it's rare.
I love the Sport Cross.
Yeah, it's such a nice shape, and it's it might be. Is it the last Toyota wagon?
Oh, that's a good question. I think
there was that Prius V. There's that I guess counts as a wagon.
Oh yeah, Prius E, right? Exactly.
But it's the last cool Toyota wagon.
Yeah. No, am I getting it right? It was only automatic, right? They didn't do a stick version.
Okay, so there were manual IS300 Sport Crosses, but they are extremely, extremely rare. And when they do show up, they go for big bucks, and they were only sold in the Canadian market.
Really? There's something I did not know about those. So if if one of those pops up, we could expect like the $80,000.
If it's mint, they were also in Canada, so they're probably like all rusted by now. I don't know.
Perhaps.
But I think there were about 50 of them made.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to do in this was a sort of buy this, not that. Can you remember the eat this, not that thing, where like it's like a Big Mac, and then don't eat the Big Mac, just eat like two like regular hamburgers or something. I don't know. There's a sort of a buy this, not that feature that I think we could end up doing at some point here, but I just wanted to show a couple of buy this is not that. Let me see. Okay, so let me pull something up. And let me get your take on a couple of these. Buy these, not that. There's one for you.
Okay, great car, CRX-SI.
Yeah. Now it went for 6,800, so slower than your average your average performance car of the era, but like fun.
Yeah,
And
it's like the Miata. This thing will give you more joy than an S2000, I think. You know, the S2000, actually gets a little loose in the rear.
mm,
And not in a good way.
yeah.
um, at speed, it's a little unstable. But like this CRXSI, you're not going to get into too much trouble because it's not that fast, but it's going to be um, just a freaking blast. I mean,
Yeah.
the handling on this car, I mean, you're not even going to believe that it's, front wheel drive car. I mean, okay, so when I used to hate when people say, "Oh, it's not about the power, it's not about the speed." When I was younger, okay, I used to think that was such a cop out when people said that.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think some of the commenters believe that's a cop out as
yeah,
well.
but as I
Yeah.
get older, I mean, I care less and less about power and speed. It's really more about, look, I have a kid. I'm not going to have a lot of time to go to the track, go to drag races, go to, whatever it might be. Okay. I'm going to have to commute, in LA. Now, what car
Yeah.
am I going to drive that's going to give me the most, grins per mile? It's going to be something like a Miata or a CRX. It's not going to be like a really powerful sports car.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you
I want
what.
to be able to take highway on ramps, feel the G forces and be like, whoa, this car shouldn't be able to do this, that kind of thing. It's not more, yeah, it's not about like, shaving off that, tenth of a second at the track. I mean, I don't care about that kind of stuff anymore.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
just want to answer. So Ray Lee is absolutely right. I really highly doubt that anything we say here is going to have any effect on or has ever had any effect. I mean, I don't think any, because we've been doing this for since 2011, and I just want to put it out there. Like, I think we've just sort of picked up on trends and talked about them. I mean, there have been a couple of times where I've seen and met people in Cars and Coffee or something and said, "Hey, yeah, like, you guys were talking about some kind of car or other on After Drive or somewhere else on Drive or Jalopnik or something." And yeah, I went out and got one, but yeah, I honestly don't think that we're having any effect. So don't
Yeah.
worry about us causing causing any of these
Um,
cars to appreciate out of your range.
yeah. I mean, I think like I suggested back when we talked in 2015 that people should look into the early rotaries like the RX-3 and that kind of
Mm,
thing. And
yeah.
I don't think anyone followed that
No
advice.
fault, nobody, because well, when was the last time you saw an RX-3 except on Archer? Did you? I remember
Yeah, oh yeah,
watching
yeah.
Archer.
It's your episode. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
I was like, "There's the drift." Do you remember the drift episode with
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
We had
and
RX2s and I forgot what else. Like I think there was a Z, right? And yeah, that was awesome. Like
well,
yeah, I couldn't believe
it's
all the
funny because I interviewed those guys back then, and they were like, "Yeah, there's this whole like there's a 3D library where there's all these kinds of these cars, so it doesn't cost them anymore to add like a cool car that like is obscure and not a lot of people know, because there's like one guy on staff who was super into like all kinds of obscure stuff. So that's
okay.
why you see like a Heckflosse, Mercedes, or a Dacia 1600 or something on Archer, because it just sort of they know them, and they're sort of makes it
That's
a little more
awesome.
atmospheric. Yeah. Um, God, there's so many cars we could be talking about, and I know we're heading up on an hour. Um, I just want to make sure that we've covered everything on the list here. I'm gonna show you another, just one more. Buy this, not that. Here's
Was I supposed
one
to
that
do something with this? Was I supposed to say buy something else instead of that CRX, or was
no,
it?
no, no, no. These are the ones that you buy instead of the ones that are
Oh,
super expensive.
okay.
So I'm telling you, if this thing went for 14, you can. I, it seems like first gen MR2s are not appreciating in the way that the later ones are, or the second. Well, the later
Yeah,
ones, the second gen. I'm talking about, but
yeah. You
This is
know, but
pretty nice.
I mean, but 14 is still a hell of a lot more than it would have cost, like, 5 years ago, right? Or
Well,
less.
true.
Yeah.
True that. Yes. It's I
So,
mean, we're 14 is the new 8, right? Or the new 6.
yes, yes. Or even, I mean, I think a friend of mine picked up one of these for like 3,500, not, maybe
Yeah.
six years ago or something. Yeah, it's not.
Well, okay, so that looks like a real all right, so 14, yeah, 14 is a lot more than it used to be.
Yeah, no,
That
that's like a really nice example.
well, okay, that one or a first gen RX-7.
Well, I mean, I actually really love Mazdas. I almost always pick Mazdas over other cars, but in this case, I think the MR2 does it for me because, you know, I mean, again, it's it's about the nostalgia. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I love that angular styling. I love the fact that it's like a little mid-engine, like it looks so futuristic at the time. Everything
Yeah.
about it seemed like ahead of its time at the time. But now it's that like kind of like cyberpunky feel to it.
It's true. Yeah.
The first gen RX-7 is great, and you can wring like a lot of power out of them. But they're also the other thing is like I kind of feel like there's a lot of mint first gen RX-7s out there already. So, you asked me about the first gen RX-7, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of mint ones out there already. So,
Well,
I don't think the world will ever be at a loss for them.
all right, so I don't know. I mean, I mean, we can probably run out of time, but I have a prediction for a car. I mean, I'm no genius, let's put it that way, but I have a prediction for what a car that's going to do really well in the future. You want to see
Okay.
it?
Yeah,
And I want to, and I do want to get your opinion and everybody's opinion on this because, um, I just have a feeling that that a first gen Scion XB is going to go for big money at some point. Because first of all, they've been eliminated from the earth, and second, like I think people really dig them. Okay, prove
yeah,
me wrong.
that's actually a really interesting choice. So yeah, these cars were, it was like love it or hate it when they first came out. But oddly enough, despite the fact that it had like virtually no performance potential, were really heavily modified by the same types of people that would normally be modifying like 240SXs and MR2s or whatever Hondas. So it had that kind of like street cred for whatever reason. Okay, I mean you could even say like Scion's marketing worked despite itself. But yeah, there was a huge following. I think people still kind of love them, and occasionally, like in LA, you'll see like one that's like slammed on, like these stretched tire wheels. And
Right.
it's got that street cred. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it will eventually go up in value.
All right. So do you have a pick?
Uh,
Or because
or
there's another question I sort of want to answer from the audience too. So I don't know. Do you have a one that you would invest?
you're from like post Y2K, right?
Yeah, post Y2K.
Okay, post Y2K. You know, I kind of think the Mazda RX-8 is underrated.
Oh, good.
You know,
Yeah. Okay.
people like, because it seemed like on paper it was a step down from the FD, right?
Yep.
No turbo rotary. It had that weird, four-door situation going on, but but it actually is a really great handling car. And I think that it is also the last Mazda rotary car, really, unless they come out with something else soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, it marks the sunset of this like phenomenal engine, that had this amazing history. I mean, it won Le Mans, all this stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, if you can get past the fact that it's got four doors, it's actually a pretty good handling car. And all the ones I see on the street are pretty beat too. So
Right.
the rarity thing might come into play too.
Yeah, that's true. Um, all right. So before we go, I mean, Apollo Andretti asked the question that I always like to sort of frame it up this way, but like, what are our top three sub $100,000 US new or old Japanese cars? This is a little too broad. We might have to go. All right. You know what? Screw it. Let's go new or old, sub $100,000 new or old Japanese cars we must buy today. I'm gonna go. I have two, and then I'll think about the third.
Okay.
It's S2000 because I just think it's a fantastic car. It's a little bit scary, and it's an experience that you can't get now, and there are very few cars like it in the
Yeah.
world ever having ever been built. I guess I don't know how to structure that sentence, but it's like one of those cars that it's such a special experience, I think. And then, new Type R. Like I hate to I'm sorry with the two Hondas, but like the new Type R of all new cars, it's one of the very few that I really, really, really want to buy, but I don't
Okay. Well,
maybe not right this minute, but
yeah.
anyway.
I so okay. I'm not sure what this person is asking. Are you talking about like just driving experience or like
It could
collectability?
be
Or
any. Well, I don't know. I didn't go for collectability. I just went for just to just make a driving experience and
yeah, I
just
mean,
ownership experience.
well, driving experience. I mean, Miata. Okay, but and I would say an early NA or NB Miata. But the, I mean, I don't know if that should count. I mean, that's already so obvious. But yeah, I'm
I
gonna
don't
say
know.
also. I'm gonna say like a couple of other Mazdas. Okay.
Well, it's sub 100,000, so you've got
Yeah.
some margin there. I mean, you could,
D.
you,
That's what I'm saying. Regardless of price, Miata is an awesome driving experience. So the fact that you can get that driving experience for at the low end of that range says a lot, I think.
yeah,
About
yeah,
As an MR2 Spider owner, you're probably sick of people saying that, but
yeah, a
so it's
little bit.
on, and like my first real pick then will be the FD-RX-7,
Yeah,
which I think it's got everything. For me, when I buy a car, I want it to have racing provenance, like in its lineage, right? I want it to have something like a unique technology. Okay, rotary engine, check it. I want it to have like stunning looks, right, and an awesome driving experience. So it may not be as powerful as the Supra, but it's more nimble, it's more lightweight. That for me that's one of my all-time favorites.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So my third, I guess for a third one, oh yeah, first of all, yes, I understand you do have to look at um, the Civic Type R, and if you don't love that look,
yeah,
yeah, I totally get it. I just think once you get on the inside, you sort of don't care what the outside looks like anymore. Um, Let me see what else. I think under 100,000, and it has
for
to
a
be
newer car, if we're talking about like you have to buy a new car, I would say the new Mazda 3 Turbo is an amazing car. I don't,
oh
I'm like you, I don't want to keep saying like one brand, but the Mazda 3 Turbo is so amazing. In terms of handling, I mean, I think it looks great too, but in terms of like, the interface, it's very tactile. It's not like a touch. I mean, it has a touch screen, but you don't need it to do the things you need to do in a car, which
yeah.
I really like. And yeah, I mean, the driving dynamics are really incredible. For a compact, affordable car that's built in the modern age. I mean, it's by wire and all that stuff. Okay, but it almost feels analog, and that's what makes it great.
That's really interesting. I have not driven one of those yet, and I've heard from other people who've driven them and say, "Yo, you have to, you must
Yeah,
drive one."
you
And
have to.
you know, um, let's see. I don't know if I have a third. Okay, wait a minute. Under 100,000 has to be Japanese. It could be new or old. I mean, God, I can't pick three Hondas. Um,
Well, I mean, God, I mean, the sky's the limit, right? I mean,
Yeah.
probably like if I were building a three-car garage, I don't really want three of the same car. So I wouldn't want like an FD and a Supra. I mean,
Right.
yeah. So I would say an FD, a Mazda 3 as a daily driver, and then I would, I mean, I would get a Land Cruiser, like a 80 series Land Cruiser, which are
80
also
series Land Cruiser. In that green, I forgot what that green is called. Yeah. I mean, 80
yeah,
series Land Cruiser with under 200,000 miles on it, I think at this point
yeah. I mean, I
is,
actually do have an 80 series Land Cruiser, but no, I mean, that's the reason I got it. I mean, I think it's one of those cars that's a great all around SUV, and SUVs are also having a moment, but this previous, like the 60 series is a little too agricultural. Like you're not going to be cruising at like modern highway speeds too much in that car. But the 80 series is great because it has you can drive it on the highway, but it still has that old school like solid front axle, and triple locking diffs. It's just the right balance of not too old, not too new, and you can go anywhere. I mean, even when the Toyota developed the 300 series, they benchmarked the 80 because it was in their eyes the best all around off roader.
yeah. All right. I'm in on that. But okay. So if it has to be a car, I, you know, uh, yeah, what's the top? Now I'm forgetting. What's the top Lexus two door right now? It's the
Oh, the LC.
LC. Yeah, the LC. I really liked that thing. I drove like not the hybrid, but the regular V8 one, and I really enjoyed it. I'm a little bit, maybe I'm a couple of years off from from being able to pull that off, but I really like the interior. The front end, you don't want to, it's like a little bit cheese gratery, but like I really enjoyed driving that thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the best use of that Lexus spindle grill on any of their models, and it looks great. I mean, it looks almost identical to the concept car, which is pretty
Yeah,
unusual.
true.
And
Yep.
I mean, that V8 is beautiful. I mean, the
Yeah.
sound that it makes, the way it revs is such a nice engine. And it's going to be the last of its kind. I mean, the next generation of Lexuses is going to have, probably a turbo V6, right? Even the new Land Cruiser doesn't have a V8 anymore, right? It's going
Yeah.
to
I mean, honestly, but you're right. The Lexus V8 has its own place in history, right? I mean, it's like
yeah,
it's super smooth. It sounds amazing. I mean, yeah. I mean, listen, I would take almost any Lexus V8 at this point.
yeah,
Now that actually maybe that's something when I get rid of the Jag, we'll talk about getting a Lexus V8.
yeah. I mean, they're totally underrated. They're great GTs that are completely underrated because well, at least in LA, like people are very brand conscious, and an AMG badge is considered more status,
Right. Exactly.
and confers more status than the Lexus, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's a phenomenal car, and it's probably going to last for decades. So
It's true.
yeah.
Well, Ben, thank you for coming on. I mean, we are, I'm waiting for my camera to die again, but this has been really, really fun. Come
Yeah,
back and do this again. We'll have to, you know, like, I don't know, set aside 2 or 3 hours, just do like a marathon session of Japanese car talk, because I think that, it's such a big topic, and
yeah.
it's
I mean,
really
we've
hard
only
to,
scratched the surface, right?
yeah,
So
we've
we
just
can
barely scratched the surface.
go real deep on like the 8086 or something. We can
Yeah,
do an
exactly.
hour on that.
We'll just do one single car for 2 hours. And thanks everybody else. Great questions. Great. Yeah, I love to, thanks for coming on. Great talking to you guys. Okay, if you like what you see, like and subscribe. Yeah, we'll see you on the next Crazy the Drive live stream experiment with me and my weird little broom closet and doing my own stunts. See you guys soon.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
You got it. I'll talk to you soon. JapaneseClassicCar.com.
Nostalgic.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Japanese nostalgia car. Damn it. I had the
Yeah.
guys from Classic Car Club the other day. So
Yeah.
yeah, Japanese
Well,
nostalgia car.com. And I got distracted because can you show off the Hot Wheels? I think we haven't talked about the Hot Wheels.
oh yeah, yeah. We have a licensing partnership with Hot Wheels, so this is one of the cars with our logo on it. And it's like you need a microscope to see it, but it's yeah, it's down there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's this little.
Um, my drunk girl face tells you that it's over. Pro Driver 33. Yes. It's wait till the other faces are. But I did want to ask. I don't remember now. Oh, the Emmy. Did we saw somebody asked about the Emmy?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, that's not mine. That's my very talented wife's Emmy award. I wish I could say that it was for my appearance on the drive, but
Well, of course. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Yeah, I don't know. I got nothing else. We're gonna let this just peter out until everybody leaves. But thank you so much again.
it was my
This is the
pleasure.
awkward goodbye. Anyway, cool.
All
All right,
right,
dude. I'll see you soon.
talk to you soon.